All right, welcome back. Bar is closed. I think I'm going to take a little time here to level set for myself for the series, for even maybe you guys who are even trying to follow this along at all, which is a miracle. Some of my biggest takeaways over the last year from really starting this journey till now is that the biggest win for me as a human being is I get to experience more time with myself with a blank mind. And when I close my eyes, it's not a lot of busy imagery. When I'm walking the dog, I'm not thinking about 50,000 other things and pumping my blood full of all kinds of adrenaline. And, I literally I've learned and will continue to learn and get better at silencing the voice. Or in my case, voices, I'll admit it. There's a few, not a lot, and they don't have names, and what that's really then led me to do is have a greater understanding, and I could have only done that through sobriety. I could not have reached these places without extended periods of sobriety. That's an absolute fact. With that, then I started to realize that I have a nervous system to regulate. I mean, go figure. And that nervous system has been running havoc my entire life. And I was, mostly blindly unaware of it. It all makes so much more sense now on all kinds of fronts. But that's another really big takeaway for me. And now an effort that I really take seriously and put into myself, whereby I now, finally went and got that blood work that I've been putting off for years, and finally went and that led to being kind of aware of some potential thyroid stuff that might be the things that are making me tired, or that then became the regimen that then allowed for healthier food choices where I'm not having the craving foods as much. I'm having like self-awareness, self-love food choices, which has been a really delight, and even allowed myself the patience and the time and got over all my humps around cooking, and have been able to really feed myself now in my home, which is something that has been really a breakthrough for me, believe it or not, at 51 years old. So now regulating the nervous system with vitamin regimen, food choices, and breathing exercises and meditation and all the things that there's a million different videos out there that tell you that that's what it'll do. It's funny, it's like, hair loss videos or Viagra. If it doesn't apply to you, you just kind of let it breeze right by you. And so now that it certainly applies to me, I grasp that I have a nervous system to regulate. And then, of course, then there became a wave of shame around the fact that I had not earlier reconciled that I was also responsible for my emotions. And then, those feelings and how those feelings took course and took flight into the world and to whom they took course to. And since I started this second season, and since I even walked through some of the first episodes and got through some of my fears of being open about who I am in ways that I never have been, obviously I've spent a lot of time in between the mic and myself. Both, much has come from thoughts have come before I get here on the mic. So, now I got to look back over time. Obviously, I had one route where I was looking at my life experience, which I think is really important, and really giving yourself credit for the fact that you have good reason for your trauma. And that's not to make anybody wrong, by the way. And then second is that my feelings and my emotions and my behavior, they were all unregulated. And, obviously they were built out of necessity. But I spent a lot of time in my life believing that that was the way you're supposed to be. And that was a real breakthrough. And of course, then you had me kind of revisiting my life in a variety of ways where if I would have just been more responsible for my own feelings and managed and regulated my emotions more acutely, healthily, I would have responded with my behavior in radically different ways that could have really changed the course of my life. And so, that then you have to then realize, okay, well, then I went through the next wave of like, hey, there's no room for shame, right? Like that shame's like the no shame game, especially if it's in your own mind, these are past events and nothing's in the future and you're not harming others right now in any way, that shame doesn't belong in your body. And so it's kind of a weird example, but when I was really young, I got herpes 1 or whatever it is, like the cold sore on your lip, and it was devastating and embarrassing when it would break out. And so I haven't had a cold sore in probably 10 years because I had learned how to regulate that. I was so ashamed, embarrassed of that manifestation in my face, and that I learned how to pay attention to when my nervous system would kick off that virus and the tingle, they call it, in your lip, and really have a regiment for how I maneuver and make sure that thing doesn't go unyieldly. And it worked. And so now I'm realizing I have to do a very similar thing, and I have been doing a very similar thing with my emotional body day in and day out, 24 hours a day, unless I'm sleeping. And even my sleep is better. I don't wake up, almost tortured from my dreams, if you will. And I'm well rested. But I think that's where that whole phrase is, you'll sleep well at night. I mean, it is a real thing. It's a different thing. You are not taking all your baggage to bed every night. But now I feel that where my negative self-talk, which is this, this new voice that I now have come to a conclusion with and recognize that I did not really have. It's almost like the old movie of Belushi with the devil on one side and the angel on the other. I mean, that's really describes it well for me. And so the negative self-talk person, anytime that person tries to present themselves, there's no longer pushing it away. There's no longer saying, I don't want to address my dark sides. They shouldn't exist. They don't exist. That's not an option. So it doesn't go away. But at least now when I feel it coming into my body, I feel kind of a wave, like a nauseous wave, that I've trained my body, like the tingle, to remind myself that this is not the voice who should be running your show. So those are some of and so now every day I get to really kind of shush that voice. And because of that, I'm able to operate more mindfully on a number of fronts in my life. And not just mindfully in the way that I address each and every challenge or the tasks at hand, but even mindfully, spontaneously, when my sons call out of the blue and need relationship advice, or need school advice, or need professional advice, or just want to talk. I'm not in another world. I'm not already 2 beers in. I'm not already unregulated all day, right? I'm able to get off the phone and be proud of myself as a papa, and proud of them for having the experience and the courage to call and ask. So anyway, these are, in my journey, kind of some of the really super duper benefits of my sobriety efforts. And those, again, as a reminder, went from a 160-day sober to another, then drinking in between, to another 60 days sober that I podcasted every day, to then another, drinking in between, to little bout for, actually I was sober for eight months, I think it was. So 60, and then 8 months, right? So the 8 months, then went off it again and started experimenting. Because again, and I'll get into it later, Ram Dass talks about one of the things that he talks about that resonated with me with my frustration and why I even did this show for myself is I'm not really reconciled with calling myself an alcoholic or completely a lifetime addict who's always in recovery. I have a lot of reasons I've shared before, and I'll continue to share as to what my hesitation is there. And so that said, he had mentioned that he believed that, that pushing things away and making them wrong all your life is not a winning formula. And that really nailed it for me. I really get that that's my kind of my issue with AA, or as much as I really appreciate that for others. I don't do that with cigarettes. I don't have a count date for when I quit cigarettes, but I quit cigarettes a year ago. And I probably bummed or had maybe more than a year ago, maybe 7 in between, and probably never finished any of them. And I don't have a relationship with cigarettes anymore. And in fact, I do have the natural repellent that my healthy body would have towards that commercial injection machine. So now I get to say, okay, no cigarettes, and I don't have it push away. They're not me. I can imagine a day. I stopped drinking beer because, I have the non-alcoholic beer now that really kills that craving, and just as well. And even that, I don't drink beer as much anymore because I drink beer because it was an easier long tail to buzz. And I certainly could manage it easier. So I haven't had a beer and I can't tell you how long. Once again, I can't tell you how long, right? I just have replaced that. And so I still drink hard liquor at times, and I mostly drink wine. And the times that I've drinking the hard liquor, it's either been just fine or kind of good, or it just went terribly wrong again. And I'm really faced with different challenges with my own physical being and how I can handle alcohol. And I'm now really acutely aware of that. And the environment that I'm in where that alcohol is being consumed, and then the mood that I'm in when that alcohol is being consumed, and how much I've eaten, and it's a variable, and that's just a lot of shit show if I don't have all that right. So now it's a risk reward thing again with, do I drink or do I not? So I'm pretty much resigning myself to wine at the moment, and certainly not daily, but I'm wanting to really kind of be transparent about that. And then ultimately just kind of, now there's no longer a mystery and no duality as to what I'm finding as my benefits with freaking sobriety. Fact. All right, long show today. Sorry, guys. Thanks.